Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be taking a look at another disturbing case with you. This is the horrific true story of the brutal murder of 35-year-old Chinatown resident Christina Yuna Lee at the hands of 27-year-old Asamad Nash, who followed her into her home and stabbed her at least 40 times on February 13, 2022. The news shook New York's Asian community, already disturbed because of rising anti-Asian violence after the pandemic. CCTV footage shows the man creepily walking behind her, following the young woman into her apartment until she reached the door and then quickly forcing entry inside before she turns to close it. Christina then spent the last few minutes of her life in terror, fighting for her life and begging for help that took a little too long to arrive. Our love and respect goes out to all those who knew and loved Christina, and all those affected by this case. This fatal murder does not only raise questions about the safety of all women across the U.S. who are now at risk even inside their homes, but also to the growing issues of racial discrimination in our society. Even though it has been almost 2 years now since the once full-of-life woman has been buried under the ground, we are all still surrounded by a million questions. What exactly happened that day? Why did the police not arrive on time? What was the motive behind this gruesome act? The questions are endless. Let's have a look at some of the possible answers by understanding all the details of how Christina's life was cut short by a reckless criminal on the loose. In the early morning hours of February 13, 2022, Asamad Nash followed Christina into her apartment building on Christie Street. After forcing his way into her home, Nash attempted to sexually assault her, as per the reports received from prosecutors. Nash was captured on security footage following Christina as she entered her apartment building at approximately 4 a.m. on Sunday. He trailed behind her up 6 flights of stairs, remaining 1 flight below while constantly looking upwards. He proceeded to rush into her apartment immediately after she unlocked the door. This entire time, she was completely unaware that she was being followed. In response to the distressing and desperate cries that soon started to come from Christina's 6th-floor apartment, her concerned neighbors promptly contacted emergency services. Police officers arrived on the scene within minutes and could hear her cries for help, but initially struggled to gain entry due to the locked door. During a hearing, police officer Daphne Yoren mentioned that upon arriving at the crime scene, they could hear Christina's voice initially, but after some time the voices drained out and they could now hear a slightly different voice. After some interrogation, it was confirmed that this voice had been of Nash, who was trying to imitate the voice of a woman and was claiming that they didn't need any help, in an attempt to convince the police officers that nothing wrong was happening. The police officers, however, were not buying it and continued their efforts of breaking into the apartment in hopes of carrying out a successful rescue operation. Nash quickly realized that the officers were showing no signs of going away and tried to leave through a fire escape, but saw an officer on the roof and went back inside the victim's apartment. During this time, a yellow object was spotted in his hand. It took the police over an hour to finally gain entry to the apartment, and by then it was already too late to save her. Once inside, they were met with a horrifying scene. Christina was found in her bathtub, already deceased, with more than 40 stab wounds marking her body. The brutality of the attack was evident in the sheer number of wounds she sustained. While searching the apartment, the officers discovered Nash hiding under the bed.
Overnight, a growing makeshift memorial in front of a New York City apartment building honoring Christina Yuna Lee after police say a man followed her home and attacked her, stabbing her to death. Authorities say just before 4:30 Sunday morning, they responded to a 911 call from an apartment building in Chinatown. This security video, obtained by NBC News, appears to show Lee being followed by the suspect. When they arrived, the door was barricaded. When cops went into the apartment, investigators say they found the body of a 35-year-old woman, later identified as Lee, in her bathroom, and the suspect covered in blood.
Additionally, the yellow-handled knife, which is believed to be the murder weapon, was found concealed behind a dresser. This knife was the yellow-looking object the police had observed earlier during their brief confrontation with the criminal. as he made the unsuccessful attempt to flee from the crime scene. The police also reported later on that Nash appeared to be slightly injured with a stab wound on his torso and several cuts on his hands and shoulders. Although the cause of these injuries is not completely verified, it could be evidence of Christina's resistance before she was killed. Alternatively, it could be an attempt at Nash's end to paint himself as the victim, as this would fit well into the narrative he tried to sell to the police of being the victim and not the perpetrator. But we will discuss more about this later in the video. After his arrest in the apartment, Nash was made to appear in court and was initially ordered to undergo a mental evaluation. By June, he was declared unfit to stand trial and was transferred from Rikers Island Jail to a state mental health facility. Then in February, he was deemed fit for trial and sent back to Rikers to proceed with legal proceedings. Soon afterwards, Nash was formally charged with second-degree murder and first-degree burglary charges. But like many other criminals, at first Nash completely denied the allegations of killing Christina. Despite the fact that there was so much evidence against him, he still stood firm in his defense. After the formal charges were filed, Nash was spotted in handcuffs. Amidst the swarm of reporters, he shouted, "I didn't kill nobody, and I don't know what's going on." The scene captured by onlookers showed Nash desperately trying to maintain his innocence and doing his best to convince the gathered crowd of his claims.
Kill nobody.
Police say Osama Nash was arrested and charged with Lee's murder. This was his 8th arrest since May of 2020.
So it was also not a surprise that Nash pleaded not guilty in court. He allegedly told the police that he was also a victim in the situation. And for some time, this did create a little bit of confusion because earlier authorities had found him hiding under Christina's bed, covered in blood and some bruises. The court documents also provided a detailed account of Nash's interactions with the police, which created even more doubt. According to these records, Nash repeatedly asked the officers if Christina's was okay and doing fine. During a court session, Assistant District Attorney Daphne Yoren mentioned that Nash had claimed he was merely trying to protect the victim. He insisted that another individual had attacked both him and Christina before escaping the scene. Nash emphasized his point by stating, "I am from Chinatown, and I am for my people. I was trying to help the female out. I am not lying. The dude stabbed us up." Nash's statements and the dramatic circumstances of his discovery definitely intensified the intrigue and confusion surrounding this tragic case, although it didn't last too long. What makes this case even sadder is the fact that Nash had already faced a series of legal troubles before he took the life of Christina. He was out on bail, and once again, this raises so many questions about our bail laws that have again and again proved to be very lenient on criminals and harsh on innocent civilians who are faced with paying the costs of poorly thought-out laws and court rulings. After all, it will not be unreasonable to suggest that had Nash been behind bars, a young innocent woman's life could be saved. In fact, according to reports from the New York Daily News, he had been arrested at least 8 times before. Similarly, public records from the New York State Unified Court System reveal 3 active cases against him.
Nash has 5 prior felonies and 3 pending court cases right now. Someone who neighbors say should not have been out on the streets.
On January 6th, Nash was arrested for multiple counts of criminal mischief and for attempting to escape police custody. Additionally, on September 28, 2021, Nash faced charges of assault and aggravated harassment after he allegedly punched a man at a subway turnstile. The victim reported the unprovoked attack leading to Nash's arrest. Just days before this incident, on September 23, 2021, Nash was arrested for the unauthorized sale of a fare card. This charge stemmed from his involvement in selling subway fare cards illegally, a practice that had drawn the attention of the authorities. So a quick look at his track record shows that he has been in trouble with the law on multiple occasions. And this murder was not his first criminal offense. This time, however, things looked very different for him, and so from the very beginning, anyone who would be following the case closely could tell that he wouldn't be able to get away with the crime so easily. The reason behind this lies in the concrete evidence present against him. Apart from the fact that he was caught during his failed attempt to run away by police officers, there was also camera footage available. CCTV cameras installed in the apartment clearly showed that Nash had been creepily walking behind Christina, who appeared to be completely unaware of his presence. Moreover, Nash's previous encounters with law enforcers and the fact that he was homeless created an overall position where he was in an unfavorable situation. In the last few years, New York City has been the scene of several high-profile attacks perpetrated by homeless individuals suffering from severe mental illness. Although such attacks are relatively uncommon, a 2023 New York Times investigation revealed over 130 acts of violence carried out in recent years by individuals who were both homeless and mentally ill. While this has raised concerns about the intersection of homelessness and mental health, prompting calls for increased support and resources for this vulnerable population, for Nash, it only meant that the police would take his involvement in the matter very seriously. Soon enough, Nash pleaded guilty in Manhattan criminal court on Tuesday to the crime of killing Christina and was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
The judge sentenced Asamad Nash to 30 years in prison. We heard from dozens of family and friends of Christina Yuna Lee who showed up in court here today to see him face to face. Lee's father said the family could never forgive Nash and asked for the maximum sentence. Her aunt also broke down in tears afterwards in the hallway. Nash pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and first-degree burglary as a sexually motivated felony. He showed no emotion and did not look at the family for the February 13th, 2022 murder.
During investigations behind the motive of this murder, it was initially speculated that Christina's ethnicity could be a major factor that led to the murderer's ill actions. Authorities were, however, not able to determine whether her killing was motivated by her ethnicity. But because her death occurred at a time when anti-Asian violence was increasing, a lot of attention was given to this aspect. In January 2022, 1 month before Christina's killing, Michelle Go, 40, was pushed to her death in front of a subway train in Times Square. By mid-March of that year, the number of anti-Asian hate crimes recorded by the police department had doubled compared to the same period the previous year. The killing also alarmed residents in other neighborhoods. Many expressed growing concern during the pandemic about homeless people, including some who appeared mentally ill, menacing residents on the street. And with this, the terrifying case came to an end, or at least, this is what most people believe. Although it's a relief that Nash was punished for the horrendous crimes he committed, it's also true that no amount of it compensated for the loss of Christina's life. And while the case may be considered close in the eyes of the criminal justice system, the impact it has left on our society will last forever. It's also hard to imagine that her family, friends, peers, and colleagues will ever truly move on from the incident. So far, we have spoken about Christina as a victim of horrific abuse. But beyond this label, she was a truly joyful woman, with aims, goals, dreams, ambitions, and a life that was cherished and valuable to all those who had been blessed with her presence. Christina graduated from Rutgers University in 2008 with a bachelor's degree in art history. After completing her education, she started a career as a creative producer for an online music platform in New York City. Her dedication to creating beautiful and inclusive artwork quickly earned her a reputation for excellence and passion in her field. She was highly regarded for her ability to produce artwork that resonated with a diverse audience. Following her tragic passing, Splice, the platform where she had worked, paid tribute to her. They expressed that Christina's presence was truly irreplaceable, highlighting the profound impact she had on the community and her colleagues. The loss of Christina was truly felt deeply by all those who knew her and her contributions to the art world. Joanne Yu, the executive director of the Asian American Federation, also mentioned that her organization would work to honor Christina's memory. This tragedy continued to resonate with the Asian community and all New Yorkers who remembered this remarkable young woman, she said. She added, "We pledge to honor Christina by continuing our advocacy to fight for mental wellness." Similarly, in response to the devastating loss, Justin Yu, president of the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, expressed deep sorrow and fear. He emphasized the urgent need for action and unity in New York City, further adding that Christina had done nothing to deserve such a tragic fate, and that her only mistake was moving to a city that ultimately failed to protect her. He also mentioned how the violence that took her life showed the reality of the city's problems. Before we wrap up this video, there is still one interesting aspect to this case that we are yet to tackle. If you can recall, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that even today, a lot of questions about this case bother people, and one of the most notable ones is related to the performance of police officers in the rescue mission. It has repeatedly been mentioned that police officers had arrived at the crime scene within a very short time period, but were still unable to do anything to save Christina's life. This question also bothered the victim's family, and they eventually sought official intervention for it. A legal complaint was initiated in the New York County Supreme Court on May 12th by the family of Christina. The lawsuit alleged that specific individuals within the NYPD neglected their duty to lawfully prevent the assault and battery inflicted upon Christina. Furthermore, the suit claimed that these individuals either denied or delayed providing her with necessary medical care, which increased her pain and suffering and ultimately led to her death. The plaintiff, Boxen Lee, who is both the administrator of Christina's estate and her aunt, has filed the lawsuit seeking justice and accountability for the tragic events that unfolded. The complaint highlights a series of alleged failures on the part of the NYPD, emphasizing the devastating impact these actions, or lack thereof, had on Christina and her family. According to the lawsuit, shortly after Nash forced his way into her apartment, at least one neighbor, alarmed by Christina's desperate screams, had immediately called the police. Even though they reached just in time and spoke with Nash through the closed door, they failed to get inside or provide any potentially life-saving help at that moment. This delay meant they couldn't help Christina when she needed it the most.
They filed this lawsuit alleging negligence.
We have not had access to the police report itself, but we are calling to account the police department in terms of its failure to protect Christina Yuna Lee.
She's screaming, help. Why these police did not act quickly while she's screaming, help?
The complaint detailed that other NYPD officials did not arrive at the scene until about an hour later, despite the crime scene being only 3 blocks away. It was not until approximately 5:40 a.m., 1 hour and 20 minutes after the initial attack, that members of the NYPD Emergency Services Unit managed to force entry into the apartment. When they finally got inside, it was all too late. The delay in response time resulted in a missed opportunity to prevent further harm and arrest the perpetrator before he could kill her. The lawsuit went on to list 9 causes of action, including wrongful death, negligence, denial or delay of medical care, and violations of the state constitution. The family sought a jury trial, punitive damages against the defendants, and unspecified compensatory damage.
The lawsuit claims unnamed officers responded but didn't enter Christina's apartment until an hour after 911 calls from neighbors who reported hearing screaming.
Whereas the police had ample opportunity to intervene, they did not.
The complaint says the responding NYPD members denied and or unreasonably delayed providing Ms. Lee with police assistance and emergency medical treatment, causing her pain and suffering and contributing to her death.
Additionally, they accuse the city of neglecting public safety concerns in a park located across the street from Christina's apartment. The complaint referenced a different crime, which involved a murder due to stabbing that occurred near the park a few months before Christina's tragic incident. The family argued that these prior incidents should have prompted increased police presence and safety measures in the area, and this could have potentially prevented Christina's untimely death as well. However, the failure to address these safety issues not only presented the picture of the city as being involved in a systematic negligence of criminal behavior, but also in this way facilitating more crimes, such as the one that ultimately took Christina's life. The City of New York and the police department responded to this by denying all the allegations, stating that the department is protected from any legal action against it in this case. Regardless, the heartbreaking murder of Christina has left a lasting impact on her family and the community. This disturbing event also highlights the pressing importance of addressing systemic concerns within public safety and improving law enforcement responses. It reminds us that sadly there is still an urgent and immediate need for reform and accountability in these areas, perhaps now more than ever, because Christina is not the only victim who has paid the cost of our poorly organized justice system and lack of safety protocols, as many Christinas have also been robbed of their chance at life ever since the incident. What do you think? Could we have avoided this tragic death if the police had been more quick and efficient in breaking Christina's apartment door? Or was this all inevitable from the moment Nash forced entry into the apartment with all the wrong intentions? Make sure to let us know in the comments below. If you want more videos like this, please be sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. See you in the next one.